I can't give up. I can't give up now. See, I've come too far to turn around. Turn around now. Let me say it again. I can't give up. I can't give up now. See, I've come too far to turn around. Turn around now. Somebody still might not understand me, but you see, I've come too many years. I've laid awake at night and I've shed too many tears. The Lord brought me over too many rocks and rivers. Can't you see? I've come too far to turn around. Turn around now. One more thing. Sometimes while on the journey, see my body, sometimes it get all racking with pain, but I know all of my works down here won't be in vain. I'm glad I just wanna fold my arms, sit down somewhere and just moan. But then when I begin to take inventory over my life, when I turn around and look back over my life, I can see all the hills, I can see all the mountains, I can see all the valleys. God has already brought me over, and that makes me know, and that makes me know. I still awake, still awake. Anybody ever have to sometimes just still awake, still awake? You got problems, look like they just won't go away. You have to still awake, still awake. You got friends that you went all out of your way for. Find out that's the same one putting all the stumbling blocks in your pathway. You have to still awake. You have to still awake. You have to still awake. No matter how high my heels may get, or how low my valleys may become, one Friday night I promised my master, if you would just free my little soul, I'll run. Maybe pains in my body, but I run. And the one that I thought wasn't the one, the same one was putting stumbling blocks in my pathway, but I got to run. And no matter how high my heels get, how low my valleys become, I promise one Friday night, if you just free my soul, I can't give up. I'll run on now, because I can't give up. Can't give up now. It's been too many years. It's been too many tears. It's been too many rocks. It's been too many real. God's been too good to me. Done kept me too long. He ain't never left me.
18-year-old was the 10th murder victim since Saturday.
3 people gunned down in Baltimore City overnight in one incident. This noon, police searched for who did it.
One of those 3 men was killed in the shooting. City police say the gunfire erupted last night.
Right now, Chicago police investigating dozens of shootings across the city. Several kids injured by the gunfire. Just this morning on the city's south side, at least 6 people shot. 2 kids, a 12 and 13-year-old, among those wounded by the gunfire in Washington Park. Around that same time, over on the city's west side, a 6-year-old girl and her mom shot in West Pullman. That child struck in the hand while standing on the sidewalk near 119th and Michigan. Investigators tell us someone in a gray SUV fired those gunshots, then took off. Just a few blocks away, a 5-year-old girl struck by gunfire. That child hit in the leg while standing near South Normal Avenue. Rushed to the hospital, where she is recovering.
We've seen too many times, tragically, someone else is being targeted, and the unintended target, an innocent child, is struck.
Staff disobeying orders, weapons, whatever, and build it up to years.
It breaks a person down emotionally, physically, mentally.
In solitary confinement, inmates do lose their marbles after a period of time.
The prisoners I observed in solitary confinement all had a similar set of symptoms, which were very unusual. Hallucinations, delusions, paranoia.
Increased anxiety, lack of impulse control, chronic depression, appetite and weight loss, heart palpitations, sleep problems, babbling incoherently, people smeared in feces, makeshift nooses.
This young man, remember, is a teenager. His brain isn't even fully formed yet.
The part of the brain that matures during adolescence is the prefrontal cortex. One of its important functions is to tamper down things like aggression, fear.
We would say things like his brain is being scrambled by solitary confinement. I can only imagine what Khalif Browder suffered.
Sometimes I cry myself to sleep because it's like, I want to go home, and it's like they're not letting me go home, and then I feel like I lost my childhood, like I lost my sanity.
This is somehow a rational way of dealing with someone who may have taken someone's backpack.
Khalif was legally innocent, but unable to walk out that door.
We should be torturing people before they're even tried? What country is that?
Holding anybody for 2 years in solitary on a pretrial basis is inconsistent with who we say we are as a nation.
Every time with the court, I was expecting to have my day at trial, and it was never granted to me.
You have a right to a speedy trial, and speedy trial is 6 months. How on earth was Khalif Browder in jail for 3 years?
The Constitution says that there should be a reasonable time between arrest and the trial. But in New York, we have a law that's called a ready rule.
Everywhere else basically says if you are arrested, your case must be brought to trial within X number of days. But New York's law doesn't say it must be brought to trial within X number of days. It says the district attorney must be ready within X number of days. And that makes a huge difference because the way that those days are calculated excludes time attributable to court delays.
The court of delay in this borough is worse than any other borough in the city of New York.
This is a typical morning outside the Bronx courthouse.
Judges are...
Leaders rallied at a church in the Greenspoint area, saying it's all hands on deck to stop the skyrocketing violence in our city. Today's rally comes as Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner says the city could see its 400th murder of the year. Police say as of last count, they've investigated 399 homicides, making this the deadliest year in Houston's recent history. Here's Matt Doherty.
At the Stop the Violence rally in Greenspoint, organizers provided food and groceries to residents who they say live in one of the city's most violent neighborhoods. This afternoon, the Houston Police Department reported to the mayor's office that the city had seen its 399th homicide so far this year.
Well, the percentage of homicides have gone up dramatically. And that's why it requires now an all-hands-on-deck approach.
Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner says the way to reduce the deaths is by engaging communities with the help from both leaders and neighbors.
But there are a lot of needs in our community. Right. There are a lot of people feel as though that they've been overlooked, forgotten, and we need to get inside these communities, on these streets, in these neighborhoods, and let people know that we do care.
The mayor also said the numbers used in yesterday's Wall Street Journal article, which showed a record number of the city's murders are going unsolved, no longer stand. He says Houston police are now solving 58% of the homicides, much more than they were even last month.
And we're putting even more resources, for example, internally to investigate these crimes. More resources have been given to these detectives so that they can work more time, overtime if necessary. But I would tell you in a relatively short period of time already, based on what we have already done, that the clearance rate has already shot up to 58% and increasing.
Although Houston police reportedly told the Wall Street Journal the rise in homicides has been driven by gang shootings, Mayor Turner says the violence is much more widespread.
Well, I think we have to be very careful when we start assigning, to one group, because I think we will make a serious mistake. And then bear in mind, these crimes are all over.
Matt Doherty, KHU 11 News.
Large portions of the city remain in the grip of a violent drug culture, with African American males, most of them high school dropouts,
as the chief architects of that violence. It wasn't supposed to be this way. Nearly 60 years after a landmark U.S. Supreme Court ruling ordered blacks and whites to share the same education resources and facilities, fewer than 50% of black males are graduating from high school. And worse, less than half of the black males who do graduate from high school at age 17 or 18, less than half of them are reading at the level of an 8th grader or a 14-year-old.
The underperformance of African American males is a huge drag on our success as a nation.
The report concluded that there is a great deal of evidence to demonstrate that all children are not valued equally, that some children are clearly valued more than others, and finally, that African American male children are valued least of all.
It is true. It is absolutely true that there is an element of racism in this, and that there has been this generalized attitude that African American males are not going to perform well, and also that they are the students who are acting out, who are disruptive, and therefore let's suspend them or expel them from school.
At issue was the placing of disruptive students in special education classes that didn't provide an equal education to students in regular classes. And what group, by a wide margin, was most often labeled in need of special education? African American males. Alicia is a single mother, raising Isaac in this ramshackle house with her sister, who is also a single mother of 2 young boys. Together, they are raising their mom's youngest daughter, their sister, while mom is away at a drug rehabilitation center.
Single mom, raising a black boy with special needs in Baltimore City schools. You got a better chance of hitting the lottery than getting that kid through high school with a diploma.
Yep. I know, and that's the reality, and that's what I have to look at and think about all the time. And that's what makes me, I guess, a little bit stricter than other people, me and my sister both, because we understand that. And me, not having a high school diploma, dropping out of high school when I was 15, 16, when I had my son, I don't want him to be anything like me. I don't want him to have to settle for $8 an hour, $10 an hour. I don't want him to have to work from paycheck to paycheck and work 60 hours a week and come home and be so exhausted he can't even play with his own child the same way that I am. So I know that first and foremost that he has to get a good education.
The odds are against him for Isaac and other underprivileged children in America, regardless of race. Growing up poor in a high-crime neighborhood means you often don't get access to the best schools or the best teachers.
How many of the African American males who will graduate this year are reading at grade level?
Wow, now that's a notion. We probably have about 50% of those young people who are not reading on grade level or reading where they should be as a graduate in a normal high school, if you will, or a normal high school diploma, whatever normal means in this day and age.
It is reading proficiency that ends up being the core skill that many black boys are lacking. If America wants to improve the academic success of black males, if it wants to set a new trajectory for global competitiveness in math and science, America must teach its black males to read early as black boys.
The biggest problem I see for American children in general, for large numbers of American children, is they never learn to read well enough to enjoy reading.
We need to be encouraging much more reading in our families. In fact, what I often will ask kids is this: how many of you love to read? A few hands will go up. How many of you enjoy watching TV? All the hands go up. How many of you enjoy reading more than watching TV? They look at me as if I'm crazy. You know, and I say, you know, the ones who are going to be most successful, it's okay to watch some TV, but the ones who are most successful will learn to read a lot, because the reading is thinking, and thinking is power. Power to control one's own life. You go from the words to symbols and then to numbers.
Eddie was a terrific student until he gave in to peer pressure and let his grades slip to fit in.
You were called a nerd for being successful in your classes?
Yeah.
How'd that make you feel?
I didn't care at first till some of the girls started saying, like, man, they might not like the nerd, so switch it up, cause you gotta like please the girls.
Aside from peer pressure, there is another curious, self-defeating phenomenon impacting the performance of black males. Social commentators call it a cultural rejection of the English language, a decision not to learn to speak and write the English language properly.
Yeah, we see it, and if you look at a kid coming from home, and they hear mom and dad using a certain language and saying things a certain way. So it's a process of trying to get them to understand why we need them to speak a certain way and write a certain way, and go ahead and continue to be behind that and insist that you're going to do this the correct way.
I want the children need to be bilingual. Children need to be told that the way they communicate at home is beautiful. It is valued. But when you're at the workplace, this is like another country. You need to speak the language of that country if you want to be successful.
Stephen Danny hopes street slang will make him a fortune. Like many of his friends, Stephen wants to be a rapper. But what happens to black males who don't make it as rappers or athletes? What are the options for black males without a strong education to support them? Consider this. Black teenage unemployment in America hovers at around 40%. That's higher than any other demographic in the country, by far. A lack of decent education leads to a lack of opportunity. That often spirals into crime and drug abuse, a cycle of entrenched poverty that is difficult to escape.
Right now, as far east as Van Sitteren.
They're on the beat in Brownsville as Neighborhood Coordination Officers, or NCOs, responsible for getting to know the community and its issues. And when it comes to a summer of shootings and murders, these cops say they know why there's been a surge in violence, at least in the 73rd Precinct.
We've been plagued with a lot of gang violence, you know? So it's just like one side is clashing with another side over territory or a post on Facebook or something on social media.
That's right. Social media is helping to fuel the gun violence. Although gangs beefing on social media is not new, it has become a big problem this year, especially as the weather turned warm, the spike of coronavirus cases ended, and more New Yorkers ventured outdoors.
A few of these gang members, they're musicians, they sing. They're rappers, hip-hop artists, so they'll make songs that go against somebody else, you know?
Baby girl, come and make the woo.
The music gets a lot of hits. It goes viral, and people from this neighborhood have actually been getting deals based upon drill music or whatever you want to call it.
I promise it's gonna be a murder.
The drill music is about violence and gangs.
They go to somebody's block in the middle of the night, they're playing music that's disrespecting to whatever gang they're opposing them.
Whatever opposing gang, yeah.
And then once that gang gets wind of it, then mayhem happens, you know? They usually play it in someone's territory and then they'll post it online after.
Cops say that causes a lot of bloodshed.
The ongoing dispute.
And to explore a startling statistic. While 78% of white males graduate from high school in the United States, less than half, just 47% of the country's black males are graduating from high school. In New York City, that number is even worse. And increasingly, when black males drop out of the education system in America, the lure of fast money on the streets leads to another system, the criminal justice system. According to the U.S. Justice Department, black males make up 40% of all prison inmates. However, African Americans as a race make up just 13.6% of the U.S. population. In Baltimore, it seems every black male you talk to has had some negative interaction with police.
Yes, just recently. Last night, I'm coming from the basketball court at Federal Hill, had my shirt off, just walking back, and the cop was like trying to get us to fight him, I guess. The whole week was walking back just because I had my shirt off.
Well, like a day like this, I was out on a day like this, and me and some friends were out. We were just sitting back with a couple beers, which we shouldn't have been outside doing that anyway. But, you know, they made it seem like we were, like, selling drugs or something like that, and, you know, they shipped us off to jail for the overnight. They pulled me up a couple times. They thought I looked like a criminal, apparently, so, you know, I've been pulled up, asked what's my age, what's my ID number, and everything, so this happened a couple times.
The rate of black incarceration suggests there is something more going on beyond racial profiling.
Judge Stewart, is there a bias in the criminal justice system against black males?
Yes.
I assembled a group of Baltimore judges, prosecutors, and defense attorneys to discuss why so many black males are in prison.
Can you explain that bias, please?
I think it starts way before it gets in the courtroom. I think that you walk down the street and you see folks standing on the corner. If a young African-American guy, can I just say black? If a young black kid walks by, somebody puts the purse closer to them. If it was 3 white guys, they wouldn't do that.
The broader point is, poor black neighborhoods are policed more aggressively.
The police, we're going into a high-drug neighborhood. They talk about the neighborhoods in which people live as if they were the jungle. This is how they talk about where people live. Well, this is where you are. But maybe if you went to some other neighborhoods, you would see the same thing. But it's where they know they can get the numbers. It's where they know they're going to find what they're looking for. You know, so it's saying if you don't look, you won't find it. Now, I'm not saying that it's not happening there, but I think it's a bias that we have as society, we've pretty much adopted. And the rap music and what people now call style and all this other kind of crazy tattoos and all of that stuff doesn't help any. I don't agree. I don't think the system is biased. I think that there is a community of problems and issues. But I think the fact that we have diversity on the bench and we have judges who are not going to treat that young black man. But before they get there. But he asked a question about in the criminal justice system. And when he says that, he's talking about in my courtroom. And my answer is no. And I'm thinking of some of the other judges, including you, and I'm thinking, no, it's not biased.
Right. There are various courtrooms, and they're packed dockets. And if you're a defendant and you come in there and you don't have the right mannerisms, don't have an attorney that's fighting for you, you can't get caught up in the system. And there are plenty of people that are over in jail that didn't do what they were convicted of.
But my thing was, the criminal justice system doesn't start in the courtroom. And that's where I'm talking about there is bias. It starts long before they get to the courtroom. And I think that the black male isn't given the benefit of the doubt.
What's life been like growing up for you here in Baltimore?
It's been kind of shaky dealing with my mom and her habits. Because my mom, she's a recovering addict.
17-year-old Darius Gibson is an honors student who has never been in trouble with the law. But his college plans are in serious jeopardy after a drug raid on his family's home in which he was arrested. Facing 5 years for drug and gun charges linked to drug paraphernalia he says belongs to his mother, and a broken gun that belongs to a relative, Darius is frustrated because he says police have refused to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Darius, you're going to enter one of the scariest systems on this planet, the American judicial system, for a black male. You know that, don't you?
Yes.
So as you get closer to this, when you go to bed at night, I need you to tell me what it is you're considering, what you're thinking, what's going through your mind.
In my mind, I'm thinking, am I really going to get away from this? Or am I going to end up like some of my family members that have been locked up? But if I wake up at night, all I do is pray and just pray to God that He'll have my back. Because I know my attorney does, my family and friends do. And I'm just hoping the judge will see that I'm innocent.
You can't win. You can't win. You can't argue your point. You can't, nothing. I mean, any contact with Baltimore City police, you can't win.
Ali Bey doesn't like Darius's chances of success in court because he's had so little of it himself over the last 20 years. He was first convicted of a crime when he was 13 years old. How many times have you had law enforcement contact in your life?
A lot.
What's a lot?
Multiple times.
5 times.
A little higher.
10 times.
A little bit more higher.
You've had more than 10 law enforcement contacts?
Yes.
15?
I know it's more than 10.
Who do you blame for your 10+ law enforcement contacts?
I can blame myself for some, and I also can blame the whole process of how the city is. Baltimore. It's just that in Baltimore, the police are always going to look at you different. You're always going to be singled out. I'm not saying it's all police, but we're talking majority of them. It's just the whole entire system, the judiciary system in Maryland.
Isaac Sawyer is just 8 years old, but already his mother worries he could one day enter that system.
I used to say that how do I put this? I guess not my biggest fear, but I used to say, I'm gonna be standing in front of the judge telling him, please don't give my son the death penalty. He's just a product of his environment. And he tried, and it's hard to think that one day your son's gonna be in jail, that your son's gonna be, but I'm realistic about things, and with the way his education is going now and with the way his behavior is, and like you said, Baltimore City, and I think it's a very strong possibility that he will be, and it scares me.
Before becoming mayor of Baltimore, Kurt Schmoke was a federal prosecutor. He says there is definitely a bias in the criminal justice system against the poor.
Well, the criminal justice system is biased against low-income people. That's the issue. I mean, and so to the extent that we have more African-American men that are low-income, it's going to have a negative impact. I mean, two guys committing a charge with the same crime. One who has resources gets out on bail. The other one is stuck in the system. One gets a private attorney, one gets a public defender. No offense, but we know that resources make a big difference in the criminal justice system. So the system is biased against those who are low income, and that has a terrible, terrible impact on the African American community.
They're disadvantaged in income, they're disadvantaged in jobs, they're disadvantaged in education. I don't think they're treated in a negative way merely because of that. But it means that we don't have the programs and services and other types of things that are necessary to bring them from that disadvantaged situation to a positive situation.
And a lack of fathers in the home also negatively impacts black males. In 2010, 24% of American families lived in single-parent homes. 66% of black children are raised in single-parent households. The overwhelming majority of those homes are led by women. Darius and Isaac are products of female-led single-parent households. So am I. So too is Cliff Wiley.
Hey, how you doing?
Dude.
What's going on?
I do know this face. I do know this face.
Of course, I had a mustache in those days, of course.
Wiley is a former All-American track athlete.
This is my mother, Shirley Wiley. This is
Shirley, oh, how are you?
His mother, Shirley Wiley, raised a total of 11 children, 9 of her own, as well as 2 grandchildren. All with the help of her mother, Cliff's grandmother. All but one of Shirley's children had early success, and she did it in one of the poorest parts of Baltimore.
I would just like them to live a happy life and just do better than I did, because, you know, go to college, try to get a good job, try to, you know, take care of your kids and things like that, you know.
She says her secret was a strong family unit, stressing the importance of education and discipline.
How'd you do it, Shirley?
I had a little belt.
You had a belt. I knew it was a belt.
I had a little belt. Tapped the little legs.
You tapped it. It was a little light tap. Nothing heavy.
No marks.
No
nothing,
marks.
Right.
No raised skin.
Right.
My mother is very, very polite. She's very, very polite to you, okay? She said she kind of tapped you a little bit and everything. She didn't tap you, okay? She's heavy-handed, okay? And fast, okay? And fast. My older brother and I went into a 5 and dime store, and we stole something. We stole something. I can hear her saying right now, I can't stand a thief and I hate a liar, okay? And I don't know whether we were I don't know whether first grade, kindergarten, or wherever it was, but I never stole another thing for the rest of my life, okay? And I remember that whooping to this day, okay?
I certainly made life difficult for my mother once we moved to a neighborhood outside of Baltimore. Again, I was attending a nearly all-white high school and getting another shot at a better education. But again, feelings of insecurity and defensiveness returned. But this time, when I acted out, I was tempting more serious trouble.
And that's what I did here. I stole records and other small things. I guess because of peer pressure. Not thinking about the consequences, really. You get away with something the first time, you kind of think you're invincible, and that's what I thought at the time. I thought I was invincible. I certainly wasn't thinking about my future and what all this would mean.
That all changed when I was caught stealing snack food from a supermarket.
Someone called the principal, the principal at my high school, who sent the vice principal over to literally pick me up and get me back to school.
My vice principal at the time, Mr. Owens, gave me a break. He didn't call the police, and he didn't kick me out of high school.
Here we go.
From that moment on, I stuck close to one of my best friends in high school, Reggie Brooks. He was a star on the football and basketball teams, and some of his discipline rubbed off on me. Today, he is the athletic director of a high school just outside of Baltimore, and he is still beating me at basketball.
You got that, Dakota? You got that, man?
Single-parent households make the role of highly functioning schools essential in the development of black boys. Without a father in the home, the work of a single mother is often overwhelming.
Is his father in his life in any significant way?
No, not at all. Can you put it away? Thank you. My son asked me about his father, and I told myself that I won't talk bad about his father to him because you never know what might happen in the future. They might have a wonderful relationship later on in life. But when he asked me, I say, he's not here. If he wanted to be, he would be. I'm here. And I leave it at that. But when you take your son to the mall and he stands in front of the wishing well and you give him a dime to throw in and he looks at the dime and says, I wish my daddy would come see me. Broke down crying. Couldn't help it. Started to tear up when I think about it right now. It's terrible. But you can't make anybody be there that doesn't want to be. And I'm mommy, I'm daddy. And you got Auntie Kika, and you got Uncle Blue. So, has his Uncle Frank, my brother. So, he has people who cares about him. And I know it hurts him that his father's not there. Just like it hurt me growing up when my father wasn't there. But hopefully, we're enough for him. That's how I try to look at it. Bless our mommies. Bless our daddies. You just want what's best for your kids, and you try to give it to them, but people don't realize how hard it is. How literally hard it is for you to try to raise a child. Period. Much less by yourself. But I think people take it for granted. The time they get to spend with their kids. The fact that they can take off and go to the kids' Sunday T-ball game and that they can... People take a lot of stuff for granted and they don't realize.
Little.
I know that when a child is willing to work hard, when a parent says, I'm going to work with my son and make sure this boy gets what he needs. What does he need? And I say he needs to learn to read, to compute, to study, to respect people, to keep his room clean. And you've got a family working to do that, whether it's a grandmother or whoever it is. If there's somebody in that home helping that child to do the right thing, that child will be okay.
But Rabowski knows that
America needs much more than just okay to reverse years of academic declines, particularly where African Americans are concerned. Right now, South Korea leads the world in producing engineers and scientists. In America, just 6% of those 24 years old or older have degrees in science and engineering. And of that 6%, about 2% of those Americans with degrees in science and engineering are blacks and Hispanics.
What do you guys want?
Given those statistics, you'd think there would be outrage from civil rights and political leaders on this issue. You'd be wrong.
It's not sustained. It comes in spurts. You know, particularly if there's a crisis or something in the community with some of our kids that are not doing something. If we get a kid, forbid, to get murdered out in the community, then you hear the outrage. But there's nothing I don't think that's sustained and long-term that can really get people's attention, grab their ear and say, this is what we need to do to impact education.
The level of outrage that we should have coming from many segments of our communities, black community, white, is not there. And I think it's for a variety of reasons. There are a lot of success stories out there. That's one thing.
So help you God?
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
We had a huge success, symbolic success, in having a black person elected president of the United States. And it's hard then to argue to the broader community that black people aren't making progress the way every other minority group in the country is not making, has made progress in the history of this country.
Until we resolve this issue, which I think is such a civil rights issue. I think it is the civil rights issue. People talk about technology being a civil rights issue. No, when we're talking about human beings as a class not having opportunities, having those extinguished, early on in elementary school. What can we hope for as a nation in terms of our competitiveness? So it's not only the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do.
Just a week after meeting him, and on one of the most decisive days of his young life, Darius gets the kind of break my vice principal gave me years ago. The judge at his hearing on weapon and drug charges dismisses the case against him.
The case has been dismissed, and hopefully I get expunged today, during my career in electrical engineering at Motor State University.
You're looking forward to going to college, huh?
Of course.
It's not his fault that his mother's a recovering addict. It is not. And despite the fact that I've been struggling all his life, he triumphs. My baby an honor student. He got a scholarship. I won't let him go down for something I did. No. Hug him.
Darius gets to go to college and pursue his dream of becoming an electrical engineer. But what about Isaac Sawyer?
Is Isaac gonna be okay?
I know he is, because I'm gonna make sure he is okay. When I was younger, right before I had Isaac, I was a little hood rat. I was a little hood rat running the street. And Isaac is the best thing that's ever happened to me. It made me calm down completely because I knew at the end of the day, if nobody else needed me, if nobody else loved me, he did. And it just changed everything. It made me calm down, get a job, be normal.
What's clear to me is this. If the idea of American exceptionalism is to be more than a slogan, education has to lead the way. And no child can be left behind. The minimum, non-negotiable, has to be that every black boy in America be able to read at grade level and attend some college. Surely, setting reading and college as non-negotiables for black boys can't be that difficult for a race that has achieved so much in America while overcoming so much.
So the question, do I believe we'll solve the problem of black males? We have no choice. We have no choice. We have to. They are Americans. I mean, what makes America special is when we've had problems in the past and we've had problems that seem insurmountable. We couldn't get this country to even talk about slavery. For a long time, they had to disagree. Let's not even talk about it, right? We went to war within ourselves because of those kinds of issues, and yet we finally came to grips. You and I could not have imagined being in our positions. When we were children, we could not have imagined being on major television or being the president of a predominantly white university, and yet that's how far this country has come. And what made the difference? Education. Education transforms lives.
Education transforms lives. Yes, it can. For Eddie, Darius, Stephen, and Isaac.
If I would have just been pleading guilty, then my story would have never been heard. Nobody would have took the time to listen to me. I'd have been just another criminal.
And I'm sitting there. Okay. And there's nothing I can do. You know, I couldn't take him home. And he just looked so like, when is this going to end?
Stand up in court and plead guilty. You lose civil and constitutional rights that you had as a non-convicted felon, and you never get them back again. Never.
Even a minor criminal conviction can cause you to lose your public housing, can cause you to lose your job, can cause you to never be able to apply for financial aid to go to college. Especially in the age of the internet, just a few keystrokes and suddenly your employer knows. Suddenly your educational institution knows. And escaping that in our country is virtually impossible. You're branded for the rest of your life.
He knows how the world depicted felons, and so that's why he didn't take his plea. He was like, I don't want to be a felon. He didn't want to end up like me.
The Bureau of Justice reported that 1 in 3 young black males is expected to go to jail or prison during his lifetime, which is an unbelievably shocking statistic.
Black men account for roughly 6.5% of the U.S. population. They make up 40.2% of the prison population.
We now have more African Americans under criminal supervision than all the slaves back in the 1850s.
The prison industrial complex relies historically on the inheritances of slavery.
The 13th Amendment says no involuntary servitude except for those who have been duly convicted of a crime. So once you've been convicted of a crime, you are in essence a slave of the state.
The stroke of a pen is not self-enforcing, and so while the 13th Amendment is hailed as this great milestone for freedom and abolitionists celebrate, and this is the end of a lifelong quest, the reality is much more problematic. Well, once that clause is inserted in there, it becomes a tool. It's there. It's embedded in the structure, and for those who seek to use this criminality clause as a tool, it can become a pretty powerful one because it's privileged. It's in the Constitution. It's the supreme law of the land.
Throughout American history, African Americans have repeatedly been controlled through systems of racial and social control that appear to die, but then are reborn in new form tailored to the needs and constraints of the time. After the collapse of slavery, a new system was born, convict leasing, which was a new form of slavery. And once convict leasing faded away, a new system was born, a Jim Crow system that relegated African Americans to a permanent second-class status. And here we are, decades after the collapse of the old Jim Crow, and a new system has been born again in America, a system of mass incarceration that once again strips millions of poor people, overwhelmingly poor people of color, of the very rights supposedly won in the civil rights movement.
And so instead of talking about it, we just tried to move on. After the Civil Rights Act was passed and after the civil rights laws, we tried to play it off. And because we didn't deal with it, that narrative of racial difference continued. And it turned into this presumption of dangerousness and guilt that follows every black and brown person wherever they are.
Ferguson was not simply about Mike Brown. It was also this pattern of mass criminalization and mass incarceration. There was an average of 3 warrants per household in Ferguson. And so people rose up because they understood that they were also enemies of the state, seen as enemies of the state. The communities in which black people live are really become occupied territories, and black people have become seen as enemy combatants, right? Who don't have any rights and who can be stopped and frisked and, arrested and detained and questioned and killed with impunity.
Hi, I'm Kaylee, and I joined the Humane Society of the United States because I couldn't stand the thought of one more Canadian seal hunt. This brutality has got to stop. Every donor gets involved for a different reason, but we are all working together towards the same goal: to celebrate animals and confront cruelty.
I donate because animals are suffering every day, and I need to do something about it.
Can you imagine living out your life in a crate?
I can't even imagine what the scale of suffering is when it comes to factory farming. That's why I donate.
I donate because I needed to do something.
Let's finally put an end to the unacceptable neglect and abuse in our world. Call the number at the bottom of your screen or go online to become a donor for just $19 a month. Come on, 63 cents a day. That's all it takes.
The Humane Society of the United States is very committed to stopping cruelty before it starts. They really are making headway.
And they work to affect change in legislation.
I love animals, and I can't stand to see them mistreated.
I feel confident that my donation dollars are hard at work.
When you join today, you'll receive this Humane Hero t-shirt so you can show your support in style. You will also get a subscription to All Animals so you can stay on top of the issues that you are passionate about.
These animals deserve so much better.
If you could prevent an animal from suffering, why wouldn't you help?
The Humane Society of the United States gives animals hope for a better life. If you can't give $19 a month, don't worry. Anything you give will be appreciated.
I am personally making a difference.
We need to be their voice. We need to act.
Don't wait any longer. Become a humane hero today. Call today or go to stopcrueltynow.org. The animals need your help. Will you join us in our fight?
Back here 145 days on a 90-day disciplinary.
Ain't no nothing. This is about the toughest thing right here. You just stay in this room right here.
A lot of people back here are losing their mind. A lot of inmates back here, they cut themselves, they try to hurt themselves.
I ain't even got no clothes. I'm naked. I'm ass naked. Butterball ass naked. They do us bad in the bitch in here, man. I'm starving like a motherfucker.
This is what it looks like from the inside. 40 square feet,
with a steel toilet, cement shower, and a stone bed. Any inmate who attacks other prisoners or a guard ends up here for 90 days. Some prisoners are so violent they are in solitary indefinitely. The only change of pace, 3 times a week for 1 hour in the prison yard, if you can call it that. Isolation and monotony. That too belongs to the strategy of Dallas County Jail, one of the toughest detention centers in the world. The isolation cell block is the only area in the prison complex where no women work. Even the male guards never enter the cells without the specialized SRT. The only contact with the outside world, the feeder point.
We have the U.S. Endangered Species Act, protecting at-risk animals and plants for extinction. But what are we going to do about our men of color? Seems to me that they fit this category. We're protecting the eagle, we're protecting the whale, we protecting the Blackfoot, we're protecting the tigers, we're protecting the pandas, we're protecting the elephants. But who are we going to protect our men of color? Let's pledge to protect our men of color and find solutions so they won't be in the category of endangered species.